All right, Tommy. So we saw a team beat the Chiefs, an NFC team, win the Super Bowl. I mean, there was this. I think in the last decade we had the Bucks and the Rams, and now the Eagles. And I think the Seahawks can build a similar team as the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know how many years it will take, but I think they're close. And I think it shows you like you don't need a Patrick Mahomes to win a Super Bowl, right? You can have a really good quarterback, which I think Geno Smith is a good quarterback. And tell me this, and Tommy, how close are the Seahawks to the Eagles? And do you think Geno Smith can get it done if he had the same protection as Jalen Hurts?
I think the Seahawks are closer than maybe the national eye perceives. Um, Obviously, we all know the Seahawks have a lot of work to do up front, especially on the offensive line to get to that level. Um, I mean, outside of Charles Cross, there's really nobody on our offensive line even close to the same tier of what the Eagles have. And so and you can't fix that in one season, obviously, one off season. So they are close. They have a ways to go. The wide receivers align pretty well. I'm interested to see what happens with the tight end position for us this offseason. But, Goddard's a really good tight end. So that's to be determined for us. Running back to me, there's no other Saquons in the league. So nor do I think Seattle should be going and looking for a Saquon this year in free agency or anything like that. Um, and then obviously on the defensive side, there are some things that need to be, a bit more cleaned up. But I do think the Seahawks are close. I don't think it's happening next year that we get to that level. But if they continue to draft well and address, positions of value, and that's an important thing because the Eagles do a really good job of addressing positions of value and making that a priority. That I do think in due time that we can get to that level, but we something's got to change with our past philosophies to get to that point.
Yeah, and what do you think if you get that same protection as Jalen Hurts for Geno in the next couple of years, or maybe next 2 years, if they really go after the free agency and draft? Do you think Geno has what it takes to perform at that stage, or is it like an unknown and we have to see?
I think it's an unknown and we have to see because obviously we haven't seen him in that spot before, so we don't really know how someone will play in that spot. Um, like we had seen Jalen Hurts in a Super Bowl before. Obviously, we've seen Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl before. I mean, forget the Super Bowl. I'd like to see Geno on a little playoff run. I kind of want to see what that looks
Yeah.
like. And I'm a big believer in roster before quarterback. Like you need to fill out and build this roster up before you put the quarterback in, because as soon as you pay that quarterback, you're going to start having to make roster sacrifices. And so what I want Seattle to do before moving on from Geno, because I think they've got someone in Geno, and everyone's talking about, oh, Seattle, go get a quarterback, go get a quarterback. Like we need a quarterback. We need a lot more than a quarterback, by the way. But if you go get trendy guy Jackson Dart in the first round, right? Okay,
Yeah.
great. Like we picked our quarterback in the first round. Exciting times. Well, guess what? September is going to roll around. We're going to play our first game, and the defensive tackles on the other team are going to be blowing up our interior offensive line like they did all last season, and it's not going to make a difference because Jackson Dart's going to be running for his life.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's
Yeah.
if he beats Gino on training camp, which I have my doubts. And so they need to build a quarterback friendly roster first before going to get a quarterback because they're not going to get some glistening perfect quarterback prospect with where they pick every year. They're gonna have to get a guy that is going to have flaws. They're gonna have to get a guy that they're gonna have to hide some of these flaws with other players on the roster. And so I don't think Seattle's in a position to do that yet. And so they need to make sure that they're addressing positions and completing this roster to the best they can before adding that quarterback, which can help them get over the top.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think the Seahawks, first of all, are miles away from the offensive side. Defense, I think we're really close. I don't see like a huge that monster of difference between the Eagles defensive line and the Seahawks defensive line. I think we need a really good nose tackle. I think we, and this is a really great draft for defensive tackles. I think if we just add to the depth more, get some edge rushers, get some defensive tackles, nose tackles, free up Byron Murphy to not only do the dirty work, but kind of like be a game changer on that line, like Leonard was for us this year. I think we're really close. I think we're really close, but I think the offensive line, man, it's gonna take time. And I don't know if you heard John Schneider on the John Schneider show. This week, so he comes on a radio show every year, local radio, and he kind of talks about his philosophy and everything. He doesn't believe in fixing the offensive line through free agency. He's a he comes from that Green Bay background, that draft and developed trade, and I don't know how long, like when you draft, I think Charles Cross and Lucas are good, but that interior offensive line, if you get three new rookies, I don't know how long it will take them, for them to gel up and become dominant.
No, it is very Green Bay esque to draft and develop, but we haven't seen drafting and developing outside of Charles Cross.
Yeah,
You can say we want to draft and develop, but show us that.
yeah,
Like we're not seeing it. Yes, we took Charles Cross, great pick, and it's worked out. What else? What else from that philosophy have you shown us to live by that? Like we haven't taken a guard. I mean, we took Christian Haynes, but it didn't work out. We've taken all these guys, but it's not working out. There's no development either. Like you can draft, we've been drafted, but there's no development, and we're not drafting like premium picks either. And so we need to, if we're gonna do it, we got to do it. Like on first round this year, go get an offensive lineman. If that's really what we're about, and we're not going to pay people in free agency, then go address it in the first round. Go address it at pick 18. You know what? Go double dip. Go double
exactly.
dip in the later picks. Like show us that that's what we're doing instead of just budget hunting in free agency and then drafting receivers and safeties and linebackers in the draft and then saying, yeah, we see the problem. We're not going to make the same mistakes and then proceed to make the same mistakes.
Exactly. And I think what skews that thought a little bit is because they did it with Russell Wilson. They think like they can do it with everybody, like, and like because you remember how Russell Wilson was Houdini out there. He was like in between two tackles, getting out someplace else, throwing the ball on the run. So I mean, you don't have Russell Wilson anymore. And one thing I believe that the reason they wanted Hank Fraley was they were lacking that elite offensive line coach, and which is a part of developing, right? When you have a really good offensive line coach, and I think there's not a lot of elite offensive line coaches out there. Philly, they had the same coach for I think almost 10 years, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like you're right. There isn't. It's because if a team has one, they're not letting one. They're not letting them go. They're going to do everything they can
Yeah,
because it is such a premium to have. And so Seattle's not just going to be able to find that with ease. It's gonna, they're gonna have to really dig deep, such as we saw with Hank Fraley, or they're just gonna have to strike gold on somebody on a long shot, right? And
yeah,
also, you just along with coaching, it's the NFL. These guys are good. You got to get talented players in the building as well. And guys that have had up and down careers, more down than up, and then you're signing them on budget and saying, well, they'll be good here. It hasn't worked. It
yeah.
hasn't worked. And so we need to address that. We need to address the offensive line in the draft earlier. That's where the more talented prospects are, and you need that is what they need to do. They need to approach it and they need to take it head on and address this because that is the most glaring issue we have on this team.
Do you think John Schneider is on the hot seat if he doesn't get anything, like if he doesn't get the Seahawks into a deep playoff run in the next couple of years?
If he doesn't get them on a deep playoff run with the same issues, yes, absolutely. Like I was thinking about it. Like if the next 3 years are the same old story that we've been seeing for what the past decade, then yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's if it hasn't worked over the last decade, then why is it going to work now? It's a new NFL than what we saw in 2013. It is. It's a different league, and we need to change with the times. And and so yes, I'm already on a short fuse this offseason. I really am. Like if I come out and see
Mm.
us doing the same thing with the offensive line, in terms of personnel acquisitions and changes, then I'm going to be pretty upset. I'm going to be frustrated and annoyed. I mean, I'm tired of the same old story. It's time to address it. We just saw a team. We just saw two teams that have allocated a ton to their offensive line in the Super Bowl. We saw the Bills in the
Yeah.
AFC Championship, who have allocated a ton to their offensive line. The
Yeah.
Commanders, the Commanders here and there. They used some premium picks on some offensive line in this past draft, and they were starters for them this year. So the Commanders might be a little bit more of an outlier on that offensive line, but they also have an elite running quarterback, which can help them cover that up a little bit. And so it's time. It's time, John Schneider. It is time to. I don't think there would be a Seahawks fan upset if 90% of our free cap this offseason went towards offensive line. I don't. They shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's time. And one of our first two picks goes to offensive line, preferably our first. Unless some crazy prospect falls to us at that point, but I don't envision that because I think there's a limited first round grade prospects in this draft. So I mean, point blank. Let's see what happens. I mean, we've got to address it. It's the same old story year in, year out.